Hello there, welcome to Roundtable. I'm your host, Adam Cooke. This week we've got something brand new for you, our first ever MLA panel for Roundtable here on Tilley. We've reached out to 3 members of 3 different parties currently serving in the Nova Scotia legislature to look back on the fall legislature sitting, which has been unlike any other as the new PC government of Tim Houston takes shape. And we're also looking ahead to 2022 and what each of these MLAs would like to see for their constituencies and for the province in general. So we're happy to sit down right now with the Deputy Premier, Finance Minister, Minister in charge of Labour Relations, and PC MLA for Inverness, Allan MacMaster. He'll also be joined by Kendra Coombes. She is the returning NDP MLA for the riding of Cape Breton Centre-Whitney Pier. And we welcome to the program rookie MLA Fred Tilley, who was elected for the Liberals in Northside-Westmount this past August. So let's begin our conversation with Fred Tilley, Allan MacMaster, and Kendra Coombes right now on Roundtable. This was a legislature session unlike many for all 3 of you, because for Allan MacMaster, it's your first time in government after 12 years, and it's the first session for you, Fred, as a Liberal MLA. And Kendra, I wanted to start with you because while you were elected in a by-election in Cape Breton Centre, Whitney Pier in 2020, the legislature didn't get together all that often during that time because we were at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's almost like it's brand new for you as well. So we'll start with you. What has this past session been like for you?
Oh, that's putting it mildly. The first time I went into a session, we had been prorogued for a year minus a day. So when I entered the session, it was a year minus a day until from the time I was elected, I should say. So I was elected on March 10th, and we went into the 2020. We went into the House in 2021, March, and it was a hybrid. So I saw a lot of Allan, actually, basically the way I'm seeing him now, and that is through a computer while I was in the House. And so going back to that, from that session to this one, where everybody was back together in the House, you really felt the spirit of the House, the work that gets done, the conversations that get had, and you are actually seeing everybody eye to eye, which really helps, I think, bring your points home that you're trying to, when you're talking, when I'm talking municipal funding, and I'm looking at both Allan MacMaster as the finance minister, or I'm looking at John Lohr, I can look at them and talk to them about it instead of seeing them through what we were seeing them through, which was Zoom. So it had a more of a feel of, I'm talking to you, we're gonna, these are my concerns that I'm bringing to the House on this issue, or it was that feeling of just being together again and being able to get the job done while sitting there with each other day after day, right? And that was the best part, I think, about going back into the House altogether. It really allowed for that, and to see so many new members.
Well, let's talk to one of those new members right now. Fred Tilley, this was your first time in Province House, being the MLA for Northside-Westmount, first elected in that constituency just this past August. Can you tell me a little bit about what the experience was like for you settling in with your Liberal caucus mates?
Sure thing, Adam. Well, it was really a dream come true for me to be able to represent the constituency of Northside-Westmount in the historic building Province House. So it was really an honor for me, and kind of overwhelming, I guess, at first when you actually take your seat, and you take your seat in the legislature, and you realize why you're there and how important the work is that you're doing. And I'm very proud of the first session that we had as a caucus, and that I had personally. As you can imagine, there's a lot to take in, I kind of describe it as drinking from a fire hose, which I know a lot of people describe it as. And now I've gotten that down, I think, to a good-sized garden hose, and we're starting to understand how things work and fitting in quite nicely. And I'm very happy with some of the legislation and the amendments that we're able to put forward as a caucus.
So we have gone from reducing the debt to shrinking the fire hose now. So that's a good transition. I like that. That's great. Thank you, Fred. Allan MacMaster, you come into this, of course, as the veteran MLA of the three people we have gathered here today, and this was your first time on the government benches of the legislature. Can you share some of your thoughts that were going through your head as you and the Tim Houston team were taking root and getting this legislature session going and bringing your agenda forth?
I want to start out by acknowledging Fred and Kendra. Having spent many years in opposition, I feel the role of opposition is very important. And it was good to get back in the legislature in person, because it's a lot, it's much more, has much more of an impact on all of us participating to be there in person. And so it was different sitting on the government side of the house. And I guess probably the biggest difference would be question period, where I would be, instead of asking the questions, I'd be attempting to answer the questions. So I enjoyed it. It was a good first sitting, and we went in quite quickly after the election. So a lot of us felt a bit rushed getting in there, but it's important for us to be there, and it's important for the opposition to be able to hold the government to account in that legislature.
Speaking of the opposition, I did want to take a little bit of time, and I'll shift this over to you, Kendra Coombes, because your leader of the NDP, Gary Burrell, announced during this session that he would not stick around as the NDP leader, that a different person would be leading the party into the next campaign. I just want to get some thoughts from you, partly because you quickly confirmed that you would not seek the leadership. You'd been asked. So it was, I just found it interesting that I think it was about a 24-hour gap, and it was like, no, I'm not running. So can you tell me a little bit about that period, but also some reflections on the departure of Gary Burrell from Nova Scotia politics?
Well, let's start with Gary, because Gary's not right now. He's not departing from Nova Scotia politics. He is going to step down as leader once we have a new leader. But he's going to stay on as the member for Halifax-Chebucto. So we're very happy about that. I think Gary has really made it clear where he is in that, and that was, he was always thinking, always reevaluating what is best for the party, what is best for his family as well, and what's best for the caucus moving forward. And he felt that this was the time, and he took that time to discuss it, with us just before the announcement of what was going to happen. And he was well sound. Even after the announcement, I said to him, how do you feel? And he said, very well. He's like, very well. So for him, it was a decision for the caucus moving forward as well as the party. And so, except that, as for my 24-hour turnaround, over the years, people mention, would you run for leader? And, it's not that I ever dismissed the idea, but when David Jala from the Cape Breton Post called me, he said, is it a thought in your head? And I said, no, it's not. Do you have any aspirations of running? I said, no aspirations for running for leader. And that's because I believe you have to want something. The moment someone asks you your gut reaction, right? It's like when someone asked, do you want to be MLA for Cape Breton Centre-Whitney Pier? Yes, yes, I do. I don't, but when someone asked me if I'd want to be leader at this point in time in my life, no, I want to be the member for Cape Breton Centre-Whitney Pier. I want to serve the constituents here. And that's where I want to be. So that was it wasn't a flippant decision. It was I just knew in my bones, no, it's not going to be me running. And, a reporter's asking, so let's make it clear. I'm not running. And so that was it. That was basically, it wasn't just the flippant decision of, no, I'm not going to run, I don't want it. It was, I don't want it for myself where I'm at in my life right now. I just want to be the member for Cape Breton Centre-Whitney Pier and serve those constituents well.
Right on. Us reporters are troublemakers, as you know. But on a serious note, serious note, though, what kind of impact do you feel Gary Burrell made not only on your decision to run the first time, but also on the follow-up campaign that was a full provincial election campaign? What do you think he did that worked for you in terms of your own election victories and just your own personal electoral philosophies?
So the first one, when I was tapped to run for in the by-election, it was him who called. He called me after Tammy Martin had called, and he said, "So what's going? Tammy's going to be stepping aside for her health." And I said yes. And he said, "Your name is mentioned, and we want you to run." And I said, "Well, I just had a 6-month-old baby." I said, I have a 6-month-old at home. I need time. And we talked it through how I was feeling. And then he gave me the time I needed to decide what was best for my family. And he said, we will make the election work for you and your child and your family. And we're going to make, the next how many years you're in office work for you and your family. That is what our caucus has always been about. Is your family is your family, and when you need to take care of that, you can take that's what you should be doing. And so they gave me the best he gave me the best confidence, the best of confidence that I could have to go, oh, my family's going to be fine, I'm going to be fine, and I can do something I really, really want to do that I could feel. And so he gave me that confidence and also not pressuring me, but allowed me to come to the decision I'd already come to. I just needed to make it work. And then and he spent a lot of time, even including when he was in the House during that time, he spent a lot of time in Cape Breton Centre at the by-election with me. And then he spent before the election and during the election in Whitney Pier with me. And he's giving. He is a truly giving man. He is a deep thinker. You cannot have a conversation with Gary that is just surface. He's a very deep thinker, and he is very open. He's very open with you. He allows open discussion on everything. And that was what was great about being in that caucus, is that openness that you sometimes hear never happened in the past, didn't happen in other parties or didn't happen in other caucuses. And you go, well, that's not happening in our caucus. This is a very, open. And I think Gary as the leader, the leader sets the tone. And Gary set the tone. Even in the legislature, if we get riled up as MLAs and we're, doing some yelling, Gary will turn when Gary feels like enough's enough. He sets the tone by, he just sets the tone and gets you back to where you need to go back to work. Or if you're mad about a piece of legislation that is going to pass, he was someone who just, he set the tone, and he's like, we don't like this, we're going to fight it. But we're not going to let it be the be all and end all. We're going to get back to work the next day after that defeat.
Okay.
And that was a great thing. That's a great thing to have that kind of quality.
All right. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I want to throw it to you, Allan MacMaster and Fred Tilley, just before we get on to our next topic. Any thoughts from either of you about the legacy that Mr. Burrell lives behind and about the announcement that he's stepping down for the leadership? Either of you have some thoughts on that?
He would have been elected back in 2009. And I was elected just after him in a by-election. So I knew him both when he was an MLA of the government caucus and now as the leader of the NDP party. So I always found Gary, he had a speaking style that commanded attention in the legislature. He gave interesting speeches. He could put an exclamation mark on a point like nobody else. And I will say he was just a nice man on a personal basis. I remember one day in the legislature, we used to have question period. The House used to sit, it sits at more set hours now, but it used to sit at different times of the day. And oftentimes we would miss lunch, and I can't do that. I get low blood sugar, and I almost can go into start fainting. So I'm in the middle of question period one day, and sure enough, my ability to carry on. And so anyway, Gary, after I had my moment, I just had to bow out for a minute. And who was the first MLA that came to me? It was Gary Burrell. And Gary, he brought me out over something to eat. And I just thought, that was a thoughtful thing for him to do. And I thought it really showed to me who he was, that he cared personally to do that. So I always liked Gary, and I'm glad he's staying in the House. I mean, we like to have as many PC seats as we can in the House, but if it's not going to be a PC seat, I like having Gary there.
That is a remarkable story, Allan. I had no idea that had happened. Fred Tilley, any thoughts from you on Gary Burrell just before we move on?
So I've only had a short time to work with Gary and to understand Gary. And, I think when you look at leadership, and I think a big part of leadership is self-awareness and knowing when the time is right and knowing when it's time to bring fresh ideas and fresh outlooks to an organization, in this case, the NDP caucus. So I think what Gary has done is shown a great deal of leadership by recognizing that maybe another set of hands at the wheel is best for the group right now, and it takes a lot to do that. So I really appreciate that.
All right. Well, we'll wish Mr. Burrell the best for sure. I want to move on to another topic now. This is one that's had impacts all the way across Cape Breton Island, and certainly in the constituencies that all three of you have. The recent rainstorms, flooding, road closures, road washouts, bridge collapses. Everything possible has happened everywhere from the Cape Breton Highlands on both sides of the Highlands, the Inverness and the Victoria side, and in the Sydney CBRM areas as well too. Some extreme flooding there. Do want to get some thoughts from all three of you on this. I want to begin with you, Allan MacMaster, as Deputy Premier, if I could. Premier Tim Houston surveyed the area by helicopter over the weekend, so he is giving his view to all of this, trying to put a package together. Can you give me a sense on what might be forthcoming from the provincial government, but also the local impact that you experienced in your riding of Inverness?
Well, we didn't get it quite as bad as northern Victoria County, but we certainly some areas. I think about the crossing road in Margaree, crosses over to the East Margaree Road, and I know in Middle River there's a bridge out there, and so these things happen. I remember many years ago in Meat Cove there being a bad rainstorm, and I think it was just about 100 millimeters of rain in a short period of time, and I think we actually got more rain this time. And in the case of Meat Cove, there was a lot of somewhere up in the hills in the woods there was a lot of debris, and it broke free and it started rushing down with the river and all the pent up water that had been building up from the rainstorm, and it just washed through all the way right down to the ocean, and it took out a couple of large culverts and made a real mess. And so these things happen. We had a significant event. These roads will be fixed. They have to be fixed. And on a bright note, while it's going to affect the province's finances, it is very likely that federal disaster assistance relief will be triggered, which will help to repair those bridges and those roads.
All right, we'll certainly hope for the best there. Kendra, Coombes, your thoughts on the impact in your riding, Cape Breton Centre-Whitney, Pier. What was your sense of what was happening, and what would you like to see the province do on this?
Well, I think there's, our biggest impact has been, there's some roads, yes. But a lot of it is people's personal properties. We've seen a lot of damage. And I think our biggest thing is we need to look at climate change and in a serious factor, and that is helping municipalities deal with climate action and being able to mitigate these issues through some kind of, I believe, some form of funding for municipalities to help with this, because many of our biggest impacts here in CBRM were our municipal areas or municipal responsibilities that, oftentimes failed. Whether it's storm drains getting clogged and being unable to take the water, or, in the Washbrook area that you have in Sydney, which is Derek Mumberket's area, which is consistently flooding all the time. And provincially, we have a lot of ditching that is not being maintained. And that is often through lack of funding in public works. Now public works, which used to be TIR, for the concept of ditching, and also the lack of having the machinery needed on site. So we have to look at those things too. We need to look at flood mitigations and mitigating things that could be potential disasters. And we need to look at providing municipalities more power and more funding to deal with climate change.
Fred, Tilley, I want to get your thoughts on this. Kendra just mentioned your caucus colleague, Derek Mumberket, over in Sydney. And of course, the two of you have seen the impacts of severe flooding in these areas. What are your thoughts on the recent activity and what you're hoping to see done on provincial and federal level?
Well, Adam, first of all, I'd like to, my heart goes out for all of the individuals and businesses, quite frankly, that were affected by this recent weather pattern. It was very significant, mainly in Victoria County and in Sydney area of CBRM. So again, I really applaud the efforts of folks to try and help the people that are stranded. So there's a lot of people right now that are stranded in Victoria County, and just witnessing the communities come together, whether it be using boats or whatever it be, to get supplies to those people that need it. And that's what Cape Breton is all about. It's all about communities and people helping one another. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is I'm really watching closely and looking forward to both our provincial and federal governments to provide the assistance that people need, especially in areas where their insurance may not cover. The first line of defense, of course, is your personal insurance, but that may not cover some of the damages. So I'm looking forward to the programs and packages that are put together to help out the people of Cape Breton.
All right, thank you, Fred. We are winding things down here on our MLA panel for Roundtable. So the last question I have for each of you is just looking ahead to 2022, whether it's a Christmas list, New Year's resolutions, a laundry list of any sort. I want to ask each of you what your top priority will be for the coming year. Allan MacMaster, I'd like to start with you. What are your thoughts for both Inverness and for the province?
Well, I think healthcare has been our focus. It was certainly a focus of the recent election campaign. For me, we'll be putting together a budget that'll be tabled in the spring, and healthcare will be a big part of that. So it's, for me this time around, I'll be looking at the entire budget, every department. But I know, as always, the issues that are key for this area are roads, like we just spoke about. And we did, as soon as we took office, about 3 weeks in, we doubled the rural road maintenance budget because we wanted to make a real meaningful difference in the roads people are driving over in rural areas. And some of the things like Kendra had mentioned before, ditching and those kinds of things. And if roads are, if they're being properly maintained, sometimes they can withstand the storms that we've seen, the recent storm that we've seen. So Roads will be key. That'll be one of my goals for the coming year. But more broadly, we'll be looking to table a budget that makes people feel like we're hearing them out there, their concerns, and a budget that will make a difference for people, especially in terms of healthcare.
All right, thank you, Allan. Fred Tilley, over to you. Your wishes and hopes and dreams for 2022, both from your perspective and that of the Liberal Party. What are you looking at?
Well, Adam, I'm happy to hear Allan talk about the budget and healthcare. I'm really looking forward to seeing the new government's budget in the spring and to see how that can help the people of Nova Scotia and more specifically the people of Northside-Westmount. Looking at our fall semester, I'm going to call it semester, that's my NSEC hat coming in, our fall session. Healthcare was a big election issue, as we're all aware, and our current government has indicated that they want to fix healthcare, which is wonderful. Looking forward to seeing that in the budget, but also the fact in our first session, we actually didn't see one piece of legislation around healthcare. So, I would really like to see the plan come forward, and looking forward for that in 2022. And the second big issue for people in my riding is around affordability. The government in their platform talked about a better paycheck for everyone. And I'm really going to be wanting to look forward to that, to make sure that it's actually going to get to the people who need it. So I'm looking forward to seeing the details on those and making things more affordable for the citizens of Nova Scotia, and again, more specifically for Northside-Westmount.
All right, thanks, Fred. And the last words goes to you, Kendra Coombes. We know that 2022 won't involve buying signs for a leadership campaign for you, but
No.
what are you hoping for the new year as you and the party get ready for the next 12 months?
Well, let's see, a $15 minimum wage heading to a living wage. There you go, Allan. I'm looking, housing. We need more public, affordable, accessible housing. In my riding of Cape Breton Centre-Whitney Pier, it is the biggest thing that we receive calls on. So I want to see more public, affordable, accessible, appropriate housing for people, because that is what we really need. I have there's this laundry list going through my head right now of what we need. Healthcare. I want to see what this government is going to do with regards to fixing our healthcare, and that includes 4.1 hours of hands-on care that is needed in our long-term care facilities. The more long-term care beds are needed. So that is, that's the second biggest thing. Northside-Westmount, or the North Side, is getting has this nice little health center of sorts, where urgent care. New Waterford New Waterford area would like it too, because we also are losing our hospital. So I'd like to see that for sure. And I think more action locally on climate change, and that is providing municipalities with the funding to do so. I think that's also, as we just had a storm that hit just like 2016 storm. We are not seeing these 100 years. We're now seeing them every few years, and they're going to keep getting worse if we don't keep doing something. So I think those are just a few of the laundry lists that I have.
You're bringing some extra fabric softener to a laundry list like that, because that's quite a long one. So see, we provided you a valuable service, Allan. Now you know what Kendra and Fred would like to see in the budget. So
Now you can write the budget with that in mind.
There we are. We're all set. We could easily spend 3 hours talking about any or all of these issues. Unfortunately, we only have 30 minutes, but what a 30 minutes has been. Thanks to all three of you for helping us kick off our MLA panel here on the Roundtable series on Tilley Community Television. So big thanks once again. Thank you to Allan MacMaster. Great to have you along, the Deputy Premier, MLA for Inverness. Thank you, sir. Fred Tilley, welcome to the House, and welcome to Tilley Community Television. Television. Very happy to have you here, the Liberal MLA from Northside-Westmount. And Kendra Coombes is the NDP member for Cape Breton Centre-Whitney Pier, making her Tellil Community Television debut as well. Thank you so much, Kendra. Thanks to all of you. Hope we'll get to do this again sometime.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care.
You too. And that wraps up this week's edition of Roundtable here on Tellil. Once again, I'd like to thank my guests, Fred Tilley, Allan MacMaster, and Kendra Coombes, and thank you once again for tuning in. If you have any suggestions for future editions of Roundtable, or you'd just like to comment on what you've seen over the past half hour, I'd love to hear from you. You can contact me directly. My phone number is 902-625-8863. And you can reach me by email. The address is adamjrcook, cook with an E, @gmail.com. You can also contact Tellil Community Television directly with your comments and suggestions for future programs. The station phone number in Arishat is 902-226-1928, and you can use the email address info@tellil.tv to send some messages electronically. And don't forget to follow Tellil Community Television on social media. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and our YouTube channel features every single episode of Roundtable, including this one, as well as our sister programs Tellil 24/7 and Not Côté. I'm Adam Cooke. Thank you for tuning in to the very first MLA panel for Roundtable. We'll see you again next week with a brand new show. Bye for now.